to get started today. So welcome everyone to the webinar on how to build a hand safety program brought to you by Superior Glove. I'm Todd Humber, the Senior Editor for OHS Canada. I'll be your host for today's discussion. Before I introduce our speaker, Kate Crespo, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. You, the audience, are in listen-only mode. That means we can't see you and we can't hear you, but we definitely want to hear from you today. You will see a Q&A box that's located at the bottom of your Zoom webinar control panel. We encourage you to enter questions at any time during today's session. We've got some time at the end set aside with Kate where she can answer some of your questions. This webinar is being recorded. You will receive a copy of it in the coming days from Superior Glove, so look for that in your inbox. It will be sent to the same email that you used to register for today's session. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce the star of today's show, Kate Crespo. Kate is the Hand Safety Program Manager at Superior Glove. She has more than 2 decades of experience as a strategic account manager in the manufacturing vertical. Her focus is providing a program that helps companies understand the whys around the right PPE for each hazard. So Kate, welcome and over to you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being on the call today for our webinar. I've been with Superior Glove now for almost 3 years and am truly enjoying the hand safety program manager role. I'd like to tell you a little bit about who we are. So before we get into the main presentation, I wanted to give you an overview of Superior Glove and what we do. If you don't already know us, you probably have guessed from our name that we make gloves. We've been doing this for over 100 years, since 1910. Tony and Joe Gang, pictured here, are brothers whose dad brought in Superior Glove in 1961. It has been family owned and operated ever since, with Joe and Tony now managing the day-to-day. Joe leads sales and marketing, while Tony heads up the product development. We have 4 company-owned and operated manufacturing plants in Canada and Honduras, and we have distribution centers across Canada and the USA. So as a company, we started exploring hand safety that went well beyond gloves. This led our VP, Joe Gang, to write a book called Rethinking Hand Safety, which is a collection of the best practices and recommendations for improving hand safety. Gloves are only a fraction of what Joe wrote about. While there's no shortage of glove styles on the market, workers are still getting injured. And so as surprising as this may sound, as a company that makes gloves, we don't just see PPE as a silver bullet solution for reducing hand injuries. In fact, Joe Gang wrote the book to drive this point home because he saw so many companies struggling to reduce injuries despite having plenty of PPE. This book isn't about PPE. Instead, it focuses on practical ways real safety managers like yourselves have reduced hand injuries by 50 and even 90%. This book is available to those on the call today in a digital format if you would like. And we also have a digital discussion guide that pairs nicely with it for your teams to collaborate. So why hand safety? Hand injuries are the #1 preventable workplace injury. You know, we see the challenges. It's about so much more than just wearing gloves. It's about culture, it's about motivation, and it's about leadership and wearing the right glove for the right hazard. We've all seen this before, our workers' compensation costs. So, you know, losing a digit or an arm or a hand not only obviously hurts the employee, but it can hurt the company in the workers' compensation area. So we've also seen one of these charts. It's the iceberg effect. So maybe the glove you choose isn't the right glove, but hey, it's pretty good. It's 10% cheaper than the better glove. When considering the cost of a glove, most people will only consider the purchase price. Most will choose the most economical option available to them. What most people don't consider is the cost of choosing the wrong glove. This is what we refer to as the iceberg effect. On the surface of the water, you have the tip of the iceberg, which is the purchase price of the glove. But beneath the surface, that's where the real costs come in, the hidden costs. These hidden costs include the exorbitantly high cost of treating injuries, and that's just the direct costs. Indirect costs can include time and money spent on investigating an accident, lost worker productivity, training or employee replacement, damage to overall morale, which can lead to absenteeism, and the deterioration of the company's goodwill among the workers and in some cases, the public. I like to tell a little story here. I was on a site at a mill and I had walked in and had just started my assessment for this company. And the first thing that they had me do was look at one of their tougher jobs. The guys were coming up to the steel in the mill. The steel was about 2,200 degrees. And I saw that the workers had on terry cloth gloves for working around heat. So the terry cloth glove that they had was great for heat, but it wasn't great for the other hazards that were in the area. So as I started to watch and I started to ask them questions, the next guy goes up and does his sampling and measuring. As he's doing that, his hands are getting soaked from the water that's being used to cool down the stands. And he comes back and I start talking to him and I said, hey, can you remove your glove for me for a moment? He did. And his hands were red. They were steam burned. When I asked him about the steam burns on his hand, he said, oh, that's just what happens. That's, that this is just what happens. And, the new guys coming on board, we let them know this is, they got to condition their hands. I went back to the warehouse manager, showed him the pictures of the guy's hands, let him know, what had happened, and what the feedback was. And he was visibly upset. He had no idea that he had put a glove out on the floor that could have caused these types of injuries. After we had done the assessment, I immediately put in a glove that I knew would stop the bleed. And within a week, we had those incidents stopped. And this has been over 2 years, and they haven't had another burn incident on that line. So a lot of times you'll see, or you won't see anything under that line because they just don't know that there's something out there that can help them in that area. So, we talk about the right glove for the right task. Many times I'll go into a site and I'll see that there's an MOC for a tool, but there's not an MOC to get a glove on the floor. So I've talked to many supervisors and, end users, and they're just like, oh, what, this really cool glove, I was using it before I came here. Or a supervisor sees a glove from a distributor and wants to put it on the floor. But there's no MOC for that, not even for samples. There's not an MOC coming through. So many times a glove can get on the floor that doesn't even belong there. So if gloves do not flow through safety, then there's an opportunity for that wrong glove to make it into the hands of an employee. This is a big one. Workers shouldn't have to choose between comfort and safety. So Superior Glove innovates to fit the protection the workers need into comfortable PPE they want to wear. I can come in and do my assessment, but if your workers aren't going to want to wear the gloves, it's for naught. So we really try to make that the easy button and make sure that any glove that we're putting on their hands has the latest innovation out there in the market. So I want to go over a few of our safety program findings with you. We'll talk about direction and activity to start, the lack of organizational direction and emphasis. So these things can be like hand injury prevention policies, signage, communication procedures. And a lot of times right here, we're looking at emphasis on short-term injuries that we see coming in, but we're not looking at the traumatic and long-term exposure, such as chemicals, carpal tunnel, vibration, and white finger. So those are things that I'll look at and my team will look at when we're on site to really give you a good view as to what those long terms might look like as well. Poor glove policies, you've got to wear a glove, but there's no signage stating what glove is required. They'll just go and pick whatever they can in the warehouse or out of the vending machine. There's no site minimum standards for protective levels. So many of the sites that I go to have a general purpose glove. One of the things that you should look at when you're creating a hand safety program is, hey, that general purpose glove is being used in many different situations. What should those minimum levels be for a hand safety, for a hand to make sure that you're not getting any injuries, just in case, Joe in one department picks up something that was for Tom. At least we'll have those minimum standards. We also work with outdated hand and arm procedures. It happens. The best of us, we try to get, everything caught up, but sometimes we do have those outdated procedures. Even when a new hazard was introduced, was the procedure updated? Employee awareness. So lack of knowledge of hazards present. When I go up on the line and talk to someone, I'll typically say, can you review with me what you do day to day? What types of hazards are present? And I would say 9 times out of 10, they'll be like, oh, we don't have any hazards. But then I ask the question a couple more times in different ways, and they finally start realizing, wow, there really are things that I should be paying attention to. Most employees and safety managers don't understand the protection standards with ANSI and all the things that you have to know. And they rely on manufacturers like us to help them through that. Again, not understanding the whys of the right glove for the right task. So here's where training can come in. A guy at the beginning of the line might need a totally different glove than the gal at the end of the line. And they need to understand the whys around that. So when you are building a program, training is imperative. So we talked a little bit about this. Employees choose gloves based on comfort versus protection. Some of them are not wearing protection. I was just at a site recently, and there were no JHAs for gloves and sleeves. It was just assumed that they knew that of the hazards or environment that they were in. So some were choosing to wear protection and others chose not to. Improper hand placement. Those are things that we'll be looking for when we're on site, and those can be training moments. And then not carrying out hand exercises. One of the other stories that I like to tell, and this was just about a year ago, I came across this. I was in a dye room, and there were doctor blades as well. And I didn't see any cut gloves, and I knew that the operator was supposed to be wearing cut gloves. And he said, I'm careful. I'm not going to get hurt. I'm a butcher. That's what I do, for a part-time job. And I've been doing that for 30 years. I know, where to keep my hands. I'm careful. I'll never get hurt. I'm only working with a doctor blade for 30 seconds. So we made sure that he had cut gloves that he needed, and we kind of talked him through that. So we get those attitudes when we start, and I truly believe it's because they're not trained on, again, the whys of why to wear that glove, or it's comfortable. It's not going to be like the mitt that you used to wear 5 years ago. So then availability. So one of the reasons we like working with end users like yourselves is sometimes there might be trouble with procurement, meaning getting the lack of the right size, lack of protection sleeves. Maybe the distributor doesn't know, where to find what you need. Lack of hand protection. And last but not least, lack of stock. So part of a great safety program is making sure that you have that forecast of gloves that you'll be using. And then, working with the distributor and the manufacturer to make sure that you're always going to have those gloves in stock. Even if that means that you need to wait for the manufacturer to ramp up to make sure that they can cover you. It's much better to do that, beforehand, instead of getting in the middle of a rollout and then running out of stock. So we can help you there as well. So we want to address all gaps in safety control. PPE is definitely your last line of defense. First of all, we'll look at elimination. I've been to thousands of manufacturing sites. So I have a pretty good eye for things that we can do to help improve. We can physically remove that hazard. So we can protect the workers from injury so the hazards are no longer present. We can replace the hazard. When we can't eliminate it from a worker environment, we consider a substitution, just as the name suggests. And we can replace material or pieces of equipment with those that are less hazardous. We can isolate the people from the hazard. If a certain hazard can't be eliminated or substituted, the next best option is to use engineering controls. Engineering controls offer the protection to the workers by isolating them from hazards that can lead to injuries. We can also change the way people work. So administrative controls include things like operation-specific regulations, work schedules that reduce exposure to hazardous tasks, and systems that increase workers' hazard awareness. And last but not least, PPE. So it is considered the final shield when all other shields have failed. Safety managers and work often forget to consider the other important control measures discussed above when they rely solely on PPE. This asks more of their PPE because the hazards are higher and they're fighting more hazards than they need to. So a hand safety program should have a few areas of focus: environment, behavior, and your PPE. And some of the things that we are looking at is your cut ratings and abrasion ratings, all your ANSI ratings. One of the reasons it's important to look at these ANSI ratings is I went into a location a little bit ago, and I brought in one of our gloves, and I talked to the safety manager, and he said, okay, before you can take that glove out on the floor, I have to run my test through it. And I said, okay. And he put the glove on the table, and then he put a razor blade to it and tried to cut through it, and he couldn't do it. And he says, okay, you can take that glove out onto the floor. I went to talk to several of the team members that were out on the floor, and it was all a resounding, we don't like our new gloves. We don't know what happened. We're switching distributors. The glove that we had before was lasting for 2 weeks. Now the glove that we have is lasting for 2 days. So I kept asking more questions, kept going over what might be the issue. And the issue was actually abrasion. So the previous glove had a rating of between 5 and 6. I forget exactly what it was. And the new glove that they had with the new distributor was an abrasion 2. So I took those pictures back to the safety manager, and I explained to him what was happening. And he was extremely grateful. He was just like, wow, we talk about cut a lot, and we focus on cut, but there are many other things that can help build a template of a glove. So when I talk about building a template, I talk about not only using that cut rating, but using the abrasion rating, using puncture ratings, heat ratings. So we can put these all together for you, and we can give you the minimum specs of a glove for each hazard into a report. That way, when you're writing your JHAs, you can write the JHA to the minimum standard of ANSI. When we talk about heat ratings, it's a little bit difficult to explain and sometimes understand a heat rating, but basically it's the time to second degree burn over 15 seconds. And then it's going to give you an alarm time of 4 seconds. So how long can you actually hold on to that part? And that's how it's rated from heat 1 to heat 5. Your impact ratings are going to give you the amount of force is transferred to the hand. Again, this can be built out into your template that we'll give you in the report. So how do you get a hand safety program right? The first step is discovery. You can work with your manufacturer and see if it's something you want to go through. These are not simply just focusing on gloves. So a hand safety program is not a program where someone comes in and just tries to give you a glove for a glove. These are in-depth, and it could take months to get the right gloves implemented in your area. The second thing that we do is the on-site assessment. So we will come out and conduct an on-site visit to this facility and work closely with your employees, teammates, and associates to ensure that they are using the correct gloves for the right hazards. We also review the facility's hierarchy of controls, which includes having an extra set of eyes to identify any safety issue beyond PPE, and emphasize that PPE should always be the last line of defense. The more layers of defense you have, the safer it's going to be in the workplace. So we'll also get into, do you have specific call outs for gloves in your JHAs or JSAs? And anything that we can do to help you with as far as an action item, we're happy to do so. So after we do the assessment, you'll receive a report detailing what we observed during the assessment. This report will include a template that does state the minimum glove attributes needed for each hazard. My safety managers that I've worked with really like this part. It's a nice, easy button for them to be able to say, okay, I can enter this into the JHA. So then we could have, if they want to have a couple different styles of gloves, as long as it meets those minimum requirements, they know that it's going to be safe for their employees on the floor. So at the heart of our hand safety program is the PPE trial process. This process allows the employees to test the gloves in real world conditions, and if needed, we try additional options. We take on the responsibility of tracking the data for selecting the correct PPE to ensure that the gloves are effective and meet employee needs. Our focus on feedback ensures that we provide the best possible hand protection for your team. So we get an Excel sheet. We build that sheet from the original day that we came on site to do the assessment. We make sure that we get sizes on that first day, so there's no chasing anybody around to get the sizes that we need. And then the day of, we'll come in with bags of gloves. And in those bags, there'll be an evaluation sheet for each employee that is doing the trial. We'll mark off who received gloves and who didn't. And that's why, and that's why we call that another one of our easy buttons, because now you're tracking that. Now you're tracking who received it, who didn't. And then when we go back and do the evaluation piece, you're not only going to have that report that states, okay, these are the hazards we saw, these are the people that we spoke to, these are the gloves that'll work in those areas, here's the minimum ANSI standard for those areas, but you're going to have in the employee's own words what they liked about the glove, what they didn't like about the other gloves, what some of their hazards are, and what could make a perfect glove for them. This allows us to gather feedback data and check if the other gloves were used correctly or incorrectly. And we definitely like getting the gloves back because we can see that and the longevity. By evaluating the gloves, we can ensure that we're not placing any hazards into the workplace, and we can, use that information that we gather from those for the people that are performing the tasks. So step 6 in the process, this is where, a good safety program when it comes to, hand and arm can go south or it can go correctly. If you use the process and you're using all the inputs and feedback from steps 1 to 5, in the meantime, this is where we can make modifications. We can go back and pivot and say, okay, this glove worked in areas A, C, and B, but it didn't work for D and F and G. We didn't when we were on the floor, we didn't ask one more question, and those people were actually doing another task that maybe had another hazard that we didn't see at the time. So during launch, these are some of the things that we can work on before the gloves even make it out to the floor to the employees. What we'll be working with distribution. That is so important before we get those gloves out on the floor, to work with distribution to make sure everybody's clear on lead times. Any training has been set up before we get those gloves in. We need to make sure that the employees on site can identify where those gloves are, either in the machine or the warehouse. But we want to make sure that we have a partnership, again, between you, the end user, the distributor, and the manufacturer. So moving forward, you'll always have those gloves that you need in stock. So here's one of the things that we would do before we would release the gloves into the vending machines or out in the warehouse is these glove matrices. So in this situation, you'll see, which glove is right for you, and it gives a matrix, a build out of which gloves should be used in which area. You can do the digital format in a poster form. It's 8.5 by 11, but you can also just make it available digitally for employees to access. You can put it in their lunch rooms. But where we see the most impact on this is at the point of use. So in the warehouse and on the vending machines, we would provide these gloves along with the program. So to have a robust program, the employees need to know which gloves are right for each hazard. So these are available to our qualified people at no cost. So once we come out and do an assessment for you, if this is something that you'd like to see in your facility, our marketing team can put that together for you. As you can see, the right side, it goes into detail on the actual glove. And it's a little hard to see, guys, and I'm sorry, but on the right-hand side of that, of the gloves that you're looking at, which you'd be able to see a lot better in 24 by 36 up close, is that template that I promised you. So there's a template on each one of those gloves that calls out what it is, which really helps the employee understand, oh, okay, this red glove here, it's waterproof. I need that, when I'm working in my area. I understand now why I need to use that versus the glove up on top that doesn't have any water wicking properties. So these are available to you through our hand safety program. So how can we help you? So we offer the hand safety program. We also offer the book from Joe Gang on rethinking hand safety. We have these great mini catalogs. As you can see here, there's one for steel mill, there's one for HVAC, we have one for construction, we have some for oil and gas, for sawmills, and then for underground mining, and we also have mining as its own mini catalog as well. These are great because it goes over hand exercises, it goes over some things in those industries, languages in those industries that you could use again in your JHAs or any of your training materials that you'd like to use with your team. Personally, I have found them very helpful for me when working with a certain industry, learning about which gloves, again, are right for each hazard. So the other way we can help is you can meet one-on-one with your preferred hand safety specialist. We can do this in person or virtual. The program could take, up to 3 months. A lot of the meetings can be done online. But, the assessment is going to be done in person. Then we would come back and we would do the sample handouts. And then our third visit would be for evaluations. The program's very robust. And if you have any questions, now would be a good time to ask. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Kate. So yeah, if you have questions, please enter them in the Q&A box. We've got a couple here to get to. So I'll toss this first one your way. How can we reemphasize the importance of safety over comfort? You talked a little bit during the session about how, employees complain that the gloves aren't very comfortable. So this question is really asking that. How do you communicate that message to your workers to ensure that, they're going to wear the gloves?
So through training, many times we'll go out and again, there's just a misnomer out there that gloves have to be uncomfortable. And, sometimes I'll joke about it. Some people are like, well, if I have to wear gloves, my hands are going to be hot. And I was just, I'll just be like, if I could control the heat, I'd be a billionaire. And you really just take it down and just explain, we just want to keep you safe. We understand that it might be a little bit uncomfortable, but those things are beyond our control as far as heat's concerned. But we will do everything else in our power to make sure that we get that right fit for you and make it as comfortably as possible so you can still do your job, but do it safely.
Great, thanks, Kate. Next question here. Do you have any videos that could be shared with us on line of fire for hands?
I can't think of any right off the top of my head, but if you want to, I'll be reaching out through email. An email will be sent to you. So if you want to send that question to me, I will ask my team in the meantime what videos we do have available for you.
Sure. So that question came from Corey. So Corey, we encourage you to reach out to the team at Superior Glove afterwards. Next question here. My workplace has lots of metal chips and they have to perform final inspection manually. Is there a glove that is able to withstand the sharp metal and allow them dexterity at the same time? Would they also be washable or disposable only? So a bunch of parts to that question, Kate.
So I get this quite a bit. I work with several steel mills, and puncture is at the top of that list. There are definitely gloves, again, and just like your phone or your computer in the last 5 years, that you can get that are extremely dexterous and be at the top of that chart. So with puncture, you can go up to a puncture level 5. You can still work in those gloves very comfortably at a puncture level 5 because of the different dips that are now out. So you can even have a thin PU dip, that's polyurethane dip, and still have a rating of 4. So yes, there are gloves out that you can wash, and making sure that they are the right thickness to stop that burr from coming in. And I'd be happy to help you out with that as well.
Great. Next question here. When working within a group and assessing gloves under trial, is there a good approach to overcome differing personal views within the users?
So I work with a variety of groups at a time, and many times I'm working with, let's say maintenance. Again, they're doing something totally different than somebody on the line. Personal views, gloves are very personal. So it just takes, again, that understanding of the whys. So training is number one when it comes to that. Just educating them on, oh, okay, this glove is an A5 cut. What does that mean? Well, why do I have to wear something that's a little bit thicker than John's? Well, explaining that process to them in a training can really help, take out some of that anxiety around maybe, wearing a different glove. That's the biggest thing, is that, they might have been wearing the same glove for 20 years, but again, not realizing that there are gloves out there that could be comfortable and the whys around that. So those two things I think would be beneficial if you're doing that, is trying to train them around, okay, this is why, and letting them know that they can still be comfortable while wearing that glove.
Right. And this is more of a comment than a question, Kate, but someone just said that they will often, when they change gloves or launch a new glove for a specific task, they will give the workers a pair of gloves to take home so they can just use them around the house and get used to how they feel and how they grip things and all that stuff. So I don't know if that's something that you guys encourage, but that's something that someone just commented.
No, we definitely would say that. And the best safety cultures are where the safety managers understand that, they have their workers there, 8 to 12 hours a day, but the rest of the time they're at home. So if they can encourage those good practices at home, we would highly recommend that.
Yeah, no, good point. Next question. Do you modify gloves by adding a digit or removing a digit?
Absolutely. So one of the things I'm happy to share, and one of the things I love about being here with this company, is our love of people. So we do charge to do the initial modification, but we only charge for what it costs us to actually do the modification. And we're not asking you to buy a case at a time. You can do this with a dozen gloves. So I just had one supervisor at a mine, and he needed 4 different types of gloves. He's a supervisor. He's in a bunch of different things. He's doing a bunch of different tasks. And instead of buying cases and cases of gloves, he just had to buy a dozen of each one of the gloves. And he's super happy with his purchases. And he was, some jobs he would have to give to somebody else because he was nervous with the one hanging down that it would be a hazard in his role. And now he doesn't have to worry about that anymore. So seeing those smiles and knowing that we helped him is just great at the end of the day.
Gotcha. This question is coming from the food manufacturing sector specifically. So do you have any suggestions where hygiene is critical to the manufacturing process? Looking for gloves that are cut resistant, but also easy to keep clean.
So yes, we have those gloves. We also have gloves for the food industry by color. So if you're looking at, different areas in the food manufacturing process where gloves shouldn't travel, you can have different colored gloves for each as well. And then we also have fully washable gloves for the food manufacturing facilities.
Gotcha. We've got a couple of questions here that are kind of, they basically deal with human behavior, right? Which is a lot of stuff that I'm sure you deal with when it comes to gloves. So maybe I'll ask this one here. It says, during a task, a worker may have to remove their gloves, but then they forget to put them back on when they need them again. Any advice on how we manage that to make sure they don't forget to put them back on?
So, having a glove clip is great. Making sure that they're either on person or next to their toolbox. One of the things that during an assessment we can help with is them not having to take the gloves off in the first place. And what I mean by that is sometimes they have to wear 2 different gloves or they used to have to wear 2 different gloves to do their job. But with innovations that have been coming out, I mean, we're taking people that are constantly taking their gloves off so they can work on a computer or they can, work on their phone or whatever they need to do with touchscreen, or maybe they need to do a different task. If you can find 1 glove instead of 3 that they can do it with and keep the same glove on, that's massive. That is such a huge fit right there. But again, making sure they have glove clips, making sure it's in their JHAs that the gloves be within sight at all times, or even writing in the JHA, gloves must be worn when working or performing a task. So it takes a little while to change that safety culture, but if you can write some of those things in, it definitely does help.
Gotcha. I think this next question is a pretty good follow-up to that one because you're talking about, choosing a glove. So this attendee here says they're looking for a better, more targeted hazard assessment to choose the best glove for their environment. Any tips on what they can do, where to start?
So Superior Glove offers a hand safety program that we talked about today. Basically talking to the people that are in the hazards. We have probably 15 to 20 different questions that we ask. And the questions sometimes are asked 3 or 4 times in different ways. It takes a little bit sometimes to, get somebody to open up or get somebody to even realize that they're working with a certain hazard. But once you do that, you look at the hazards and then you look at the ANSI standards. We have these hazards. This is what the ANSI standards are. This is what a glove template should look like. So once you have that template, A4 cut, A3 puncture, A4 abrasion, maybe they need some back of the hand, then that language can go into a JHA for a specific hazard. And then if you have a distributor coming in or a manufacturer coming in saying, hey, I've got the best glove for that hazard, as long as it doesn't fall below those minimum requirements, that's where it can be very helpful, again, in writing your JHAs and making sure you have the right glove for the right hazard.
Gotcha. And then next question here, this is really about kind of making the business case to management. So the way it's phrased here is, how can we make sure that management is purchasing the correct hand PPE and not just picking the cheapest ones?
So one of the reasons we have we have the hand safety program is because of that fact. So what we like to look at is a gap. So there's always that gap between purchasing, production, the employee, and safety. This program really takes that gap and works through it. So the report itself is going to go over all those hazards. So many times, purchasing is on the, they're behind a computer. They're not out on the floor. They don't actually see the hazards. They don't understand what's happening. So with that report, they're going to have all that information. They're going to have the call outs. They're going to have the matrix. It's going to show, hopefully where you can consolidate, or maybe even in some other areas you're adding. So the report itself is huge if you're a safety manager that is really working or trying to get purchasing to understand what the day-to-days are and the safety side of things. But even more importantly, the way we run the sample and evaluation program is significant, because we're going to get those gloves back. We're going to take pictures of those gloves if it's anything, out of the norm. Purchasing can see that. Purchasing can also see the evaluation forms that you're getting back from your employees in their own words, stating the glove that I had before just wasn't working. It was lasting a day, maybe. It was hard to grip my tools. And they can see those in real time and understand that that's the employee's voice coming forward. So those two pieces are part of a very strong safety hazard assessment.
Sure. Another question here, Kate. This may be a tricky one to answer, but I'll throw it your way anyway. So essentially what this person is saying is that they have some workers that seem to be harder on gloves than others. They have some workers who are replacing gloves, 2 to 3 times more frequently than ones that don't. Is that kind of normal? Is that just, people work in different ways, or should they be talking to these people to see if there's something they can do to make the glove last longer?
So they could definitely, I'll back up. So everybody works a little bit differently. Should they replace them 2 to 3 times more? No. I was just at a mine a couple months ago, and several of the workers were getting hot hands. Some of them it was even burning through the glove. We went to a different part of the mine where the workers that we had spoke to there had worked in that department before, and they said that shouldn't be happening. Well, it was because of the hand placement of those employees to why their hands were getting burned. Once they went back over there and retrained, they didn't have that issue anymore. But some people, it's part of their culture. They're just going to take a glove off and throw it away. If you're really having issues and you're a large organization, you can do vending, and vending really does help in those areas, because you can control, how many gloves are going out, or you can see how many gloves are going out. And if you need to look at an employee, I would definitely look at ergonomics. I'm 5'4". I'm going to work much differently than somebody at 6 foot is going to work. So ergonomics plays a huge role in that wear. You can also look at the glove itself. So you can look in the thumb crotch area. Is it wearing out there? Again, for me, my grip is going to be totally different at 5'4" than someone that has bigger hands, and they're over the part versus me being parallel with the part. So there's many variations there, but again, in an assessment, that's going to come through loud and clear, because we're going to be able to see the gloves that they're using, and we can help with that as well.
Great, thanks, Kate. That's kind of the last question I had here, though. There's another comment here, just as an FYI. We've got some people looking for copies of the catalog. So I'm assuming that will be part of the reach out that Superior Glove does post-webinar, correct?
Yes, and they can go online to our website, and the catalogs are online as well.
Yeah, there's one here specifically that's left an email address, so I'm sure your team will see that. Any closing thoughts from you, Kate, before we let everybody go today?
No, I just I really enjoyed being able to give this webinar, and it truly is a passion for Superior Glove and myself to be able to get out and work on site with your teams. This is a partnership program, and we just we'd love to get out to more facilities. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you, Kate. We appreciate you joining us today to share your expertise. As always, we always learn something every time we've got you on the line. So, and thanks today to our readers for joining us for this important discussion on hand safety. Just a reminder, you will be receiving a link to a recording of this webinar directly from Superior Glove. So keep an eye out for that email coming into your inbox. So on behalf of OHS Canada and Superior Glove, we wish you a safe rest of your day.